Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having an amazing day no matter where you're watching from around the world. Today we're diving deep into XRP, and I've got to kick things off with something that's been on my mind. Here's the thing. In just 4 weeks, you're going to see everyone and their grandmother claiming they totally predicted this crypto rally. They'll swear up and down that they weren't scared during that brutal August to November sell-off. But let's be real, most of them absolutely were. And here's what's even more predictable. These same people are going to tell you this crypto rally is going to last for months, maybe even years. You'll hear Tom Lee and others pushing the narrative that we're looking at a massive 2-year Bitcoin run. Everyone's suddenly become an expert on when the top is coming. But here's my take, and I want you to really listen to this. I believe we're about to witness Bitcoin's final major climb before it comes crashing back down. Now here's where it gets really interesting. What happens next with utility-driven cryptocurrencies like XRP is going to be absolutely crucial. If we start seeing real adoption kicking in, actual utilization of these cryptocurrencies in the real world, that's when everything changes. That's our game-changer moment. We could be looking at a complete shift into what I call a full-blown utility run. And that's where the real opportunities lie. All right, let's talk about something that's been on everyone's mind lately. You know how Ripple has this grand vision of XRP becoming the go-to liquidity tool for banks worldwide? Well, there's a catch. It only works when XRP's market cap is big enough to handle the massive transactions banks need. And here's where it gets really interesting. These XRP ETFs that just launched, the timing has people talking. I mean, we're not just talking about random market moves here. There's a growing belief that these ETFs are perfectly positioned to send XRP's price soaring. And when that happens, boom, banks will finally move from testing to full implementation because they'll have the liquidity depth they've been waiting for. Now, before you get too excited, let me keep it real with you. This is still in the speculation zone. But the timing? That's what's making me scratch my head in the best way possible. Look at what's happening around us right now. We just witnessed ISO 2022 go live. And trust me, we're going to break down exactly why that's a game changer in just a moment. Then January rolls around with Basel III regulations. I mean, come on. When you see all these massive financial shifts happening within months of each other, you start wondering if someone's orchestrating this whole thing. Maybe these ETFs launching right now isn't coincidence at all. Maybe it's all part of a bigger plan. We'll find out soon enough, and you know I'll be here to walk you through every development. But before we dive into all that, let's focus on something that could directly impact your portfolio. The top 10 XRP Ledger DeFi platforms that are absolutely crushing it in 2025.
Okay, so here's what's got me really excited about what's happening on the XRP Ledger right now. We've got all these innovative platforms popping up, each one building out DeFi solutions that are going to add serious value to XRP over the long haul. But here's the part that should have every XRP holder paying attention. For the very first time, we're talking about being able to actually put our XRP to work. I'm talking about staking your XRP and earning passive income, borrowing against your holdings when you need liquidity, and essentially making your XRP work as hard as you do. Now, we're not quite there yet. I want to be transparent about that. But we're talking short term here, not years down the road. And honestly, the timing couldn't be better. Think back to those brutal bear market days of 2022 and 2023, and even most of 2024. Man, having DeFi options back then would have been a complete game changer. Instead of just watching our portfolio sit there, we could have been earning yield, generating income, and actually building wealth even during the downturn. That's the power of what's coming to XRP, and why these platforms we're about to dive into are so important for anyone serious about maximizing their XRP potential. Imagine never having to sell your XRP again, just earning from it while you hold. That's exactly what's coming our way, and honestly, it can't get here fast enough. Now check this out. The data from Flare is absolutely fascinating. FXRP is showing incredible strength right now, and the total mint numbers? They just keep climbing higher. There's this powerful quote that really hits home. Uncertainty often becomes the catalyst for those willing to learn and advance. And boy, are we seeing that play out right now. Get this. We're looking at 65 million XRP already locked away in FXRP, and we're talking about $135 million worth of value just sitting there, completely off the market. But here's the kicker.
That number isn't slowing down. It's growing every single day. Now remember, Flare has this ambitious goal of locking away 5% of the entire XRP supply. Think about that for a second. You've got these new ETFs buying up XRP and locking it away from circulation. Flare's doing the exact same thing on their end. And on top of all that, we're seeing companies building XRP treasuries left and right. I mean, when you connect all these dots, the picture becomes crystal clear. We're heading straight towards something the crypto world has been talking about for years: real scarcity. And when scarcity hits a utility token like XRP that actually has massive real-world demand, well, let's just say the math gets very interesting very quickly.
All right, I need to be completely honest with you all about something. And it comes from Mason vs. Lewis. You know that famous diagram that's been floating around forever? The one that shows all these connections between Ripple, XRP, and various protocols? Well, here's the thing. Some random person created that diagram way back in the day. And I'll admit it, I shared it on my channel like it was gospel truth. But let's keep it real here. Just because something looks professional and well-designed doesn't automatically make it verified fact. The actual creator of that diagram is speaking out now, and here's what he's saying. What I think these diagrams were meant to do was to give you an idea of where everything is going. So when you look at that diagram showing Ripple, XRP, Interledger Protocol connected to Corda, ISO 20222, IBM, Stellar, XDC, Algorand, and Quant, it wasn't meant to be a factual roadmap. It was more like a vision board of possibilities. Same thing goes for that other diagram floating around showing XRP backed by 1 ounce of gold. Look, I never bought into the idea that XRP would literally be gold-backed. That just doesn't make sense with how it functions. But I do think these diagrams serve a purpose. They're meant to help us visualize where XRP's price could potentially go based on its utility and adoption. The key is understanding the difference between speculation and confirmed facts. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page about that. All right, let's circle back to ISO because there's something I need to address that's been bugging me. I keep seeing people say things like, oh, XRP is just another cryptocurrency that has nothing to do with traditional finance payments. And honestly, that statement couldn't be more wrong if it tried. This insight comes from smoke, and when you actually dive into the documentation, really look at the technical details, it becomes crystal clear how off-base that thinking is. Here's what the report reveals, and this is crucial. Unlike the vast majority of cryptocurrencies out there, XRP wasn't created to be some speculative digital coin. It was deliberately engineered to work hand-in-hand with the traditional financial system. We're talking about a digital asset that was built from the ground up with one specific mission: to solve the massive inefficiencies that have plagued international money transfers for decades. XRP provides instant liquidity and acts as a bridge between different currencies, something the traditional banking system has been desperately needing. This isn't some accident or afterthought. XRP was specifically designed to address the exact pain points that banks and financial institutions deal with every single day. So when people try to dismiss it as just another crypto, they're completely missing the point of what XRP actually is and why it exists in the first place.
And here's why this misconception is so frustrating. It's actually way too easy to debunk when you know the real story. Right now, there are tons of people out there claiming that XRP has absolutely nothing to do with the traditional financial system. But here's what they're missing. Ripple didn't just randomly create XRP to be another crypto token sitting on an exchange. David Schwartz and the founding team had a very specific vision when they built XRP. They looked at the traditional financial system and said, "This is broken. Cross-border payments take days, cost a fortune in fees, and leave billions of people underserved. We need to fix this." So they didn't create XRP to compete against the traditional financial system. They created it to enhance and improve it. Every technical decision, every protocol choice, every feature was designed with one goal in mind: solving the real-world problems that banks and financial institutions face every single day. When people say XRP has nothing to do with traditional finance, they're literally missing the entire reason it exists. It's like saying a wrench has nothing to do with fixing pipes. That's literally what it was made for.
That's exactly what XRP was designed to accomplish from day one. But now let's dive back into the ISO situation because this is where things get really interesting. So here's what we know for sure. Ripple is officially part of the ISO 20022 standards body now. As XRP holders, we've been tracking this development closely, and honestly, Ripple has been pushing for this integration since the very beginning. Now, I need to address something that I've been saying myself, and I want to be completely transparent about it. You'll hear people, including me in the past, say that XRP is not ISO compliant. And you know what? Technically, that statement is correct. But here's where I need to be more precise with my language, and this is important. When I used that term before, I wasn't explaining it in the most helpful way. The reality is more nuanced than that. XRP itself isn't ISO compliant in the traditional sense, but, and this is the key part, XRP can absolutely be utilized within ISO 20022 messages. It can work seamlessly with the new messaging standards that banks are already implementing worldwide. So, while XRP might not carry the official ISO compliant label, it's completely compatible with the system that's becoming the global standard for financial messaging. That's a huge distinction that changes everything about how we should be thinking about XRP's role in the future of finance. Let's break this down in simple terms because this is actually way less complicated than people make it sound. ISO 20022 is essentially just an upgraded messaging system. Think of it like banks getting a brand new language to communicate with each other more efficiently. So, here's the million-dollar question everyone's been asking. Can XRP actually be used within these ISO 20022 messages? The answer is absolutely yes. And here's exactly how it works. XRP can be integrated into these messages through platforms like RippleNet that already use this standard. Basically, XRP becomes the actual asset that moves within the transactions that these messages are describing. Now, here's the important distinction I want you to understand. XRP itself isn't technically an ISO 20022 compliant token. That's not how it works. But here's what matters way more. The messaging and payment systems that banks and institutions use can absolutely follow the ISO standard while using XRP as the settlement asset. Think of it this way. The message format follows ISO rules, but the asset that actually moves the value? That can be XRP. It's like having a standardized envelope that can carry any type of valuable contents inside. So when banks communicate using the new ISO messaging standard, XRP can be the digital asset that actually settles those transactions behind the scenes. That's the real power of this integration. Here's the bottom line that everyone needs to understand. Whether XRP itself is technically compliant or not is completely beside the point. What actually matters? RippleNet is compliant. The XRP ledger is compliant. And Grok backs this up perfectly when it confirms that financial institutions can absolutely originate ISO 20022 messages, route them through RippleNet, and settle those transactions using XRP. This isn't theoretical stuff we're talking about here. XRP was literally built for settlement, while maintaining all the compliance and data integrity that regulators require. And get this system has been live and operational for years now. We're talking about dozens of banks and central banks that have been testing this technology, using it for central bank digital currencies, for remittances, for all kinds of financial operations. The infrastructure is already there and working. Now here's the key point that everyone seems to be missing. These banks are still in the testing phase. But when they finally graduate from testing to full-scale implementation, they're going to have the option to use XRP for settlement, for on-demand liquidity, for everything they've been preparing for. I really hope this finally puts to rest all this back-and-forth argument about ISO 20022 that's been flooding social media. This is exactly what I've been trying to explain in my videos over the past couple of years, because honestly, this compliance debate has been going in circles for way too long. But here's what really matters. None of these technical details change the big picture. When banks move out of testing mode and go live with these systems, we're going to see a completely different price environment for XRP. That's the real story here. So King Valak drops this comment saying, ILP doesn't need XRP. Really? Let me break down why that doesn't add up. Stefan Thomas, the actual creator of the Interledger Protocol, is now supposedly claiming that this technology he helped build at Ripple was just some kind of casual side project? The same technology that was specifically engineered to handle massive transaction volumes using XRP was just them playing around? Come on, that doesn't pass the smell test. And now we've got people jumping on this train saying that since XRP isn't technically ISO compliant, the Interledger Protocol is going to be completely sidelined. But here's what they're conveniently forgetting. David Schwartz has talked about ILP countless times over the years, explaining its critical role in the ecosystem. Stefan Thomas himself has explained how this technology revolutionizes micropayments. Brad Garlinghouse has repeatedly talked about removing friction from payments. And guess what makes that possible? The Interledger Protocol. This is the technology that lets you get paid by the second, by the minute, instead of waiting for those traditional weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly payment cycles that we're all stuck with right now. The Interledger Protocol isn't just some nice-to-have feature. It's an absolute game changer for how money moves in the digital economy. So when people try to downplay its importance or disconnect it from XRP, they're missing the bigger picture of what this technology was designed to accomplish. All right, let's talk about something I see constantly in the comments. This idea that holding 100 XRP is your guaranteed ticket to retirement. I hate to break it to you, but it's not that simple. Look, I get where this thinking comes from. The math seems straightforward, right? If you've got 100 XRP and the price hits $10,000 per token, boom, you're a millionaire. And honestly, that's probably where this whole 100 XRP is all you need narrative started, because everyone's been throwing around these massive price predictions. But here's the reality check we all need to have. Are you actually prepared to hold your XRP until it reaches those levels? Because if you're planning to take profits along the way, which, let's be honest, most people will, then you're going to need a lot more than 100 XRP to reach your financial goals. Now, there's another angle to consider. It's not just about holding those 100 tokens and hoping for the best. You could potentially put that XRP to work for you through staking, lending, or other DeFi opportunities as they become available. That changes the game completely. As for timing, when could we realistically see these massive price points? Some people are betting on 2030, but honestly, if I'm looking at how fast things are moving, I think we're talking more like 2028. Why 2028? Because by then, everything we've been discussing, the new financial system, mass tokenization, institutional adoption, all of that infrastructure should be fully operational. And when that happens, the demand dynamics for XRP could look completely different than what we're seeing today. I honestly think we're going to see mass adoption happen by then too. But here's something that's been on my mind lately. This whole idea that quantum computers will kill crypto, just Bitcoin. You know what Bitcoin maximalists always say, right? If Bitcoin dies, then crypto dies with it. They've been pushing this narrative for years because they genuinely believe Bitcoin will always be the #1 cryptocurrency. Their logic is simple. If Bitcoin ever becomes irrelevant and crashes down to something like $1,000, they think the entire crypto market would collapse with it. They don't even believe a decoupling between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto is possible. But here's where I think they're completely wrong. I believe we're going to see that decoupling happen by 2028, and honestly, it might start way sooner than that. We could see it during this current run, maybe even in the next couple of months. Picture this scenario. XRP becomes truly scarce, the price absolutely skyrockets, and suddenly XRP becomes the #1 cryptocurrency. What happens to all that blind faith in Bitcoin? It's gone forever. When XRP dethrones Bitcoin, where do you think all that institutional money is going to flow? Straight into the new #1 token. And then, and this is key, mainstream media will have no choice but to start talking about XRP. Let's be real about something. The only reason mainstream media constantly talks about Bitcoin is because it's one massive marketing campaign. Michael Saylor, all these other talking heads, they're bought and paid for. Have you ever noticed how whenever someone starts talking about XRP or any other crypto on these shows, they immediately get redirected? But what about Bitcoin? Why aren't you focusing on Bitcoin? It's the same script every single time. Even if quantum computers do eventually kill Bitcoin, the rest of the crypto ecosystem will still be here, thriving.
And most of us who positioned ourselves correctly will already be retired and living our best lives. Until that day comes, though, we need to stay patient, stay positive, and keep building toward our financial freedom together. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this community. I'll catch you in the next one. Have an amazing night.